Thank you for being here today. So, as the title alludes behind me, I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes of what it's really like running PPC. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a literal introduction on myself, because I'm sure you're thinking, who is this 16-year-old looking guy on stage telling me how to do PPC? So, as he said, my name is Lambert. I've been working in marketing now for around 7 years, and I've been specializing in PPC for about 5 years. And no word of a lie, I love seeing brands succeed. It's one of the simple joys in life for me. And today in this presentation, well, I'm going to teach you 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 top tips on what I do with my lead generation. I'm going to tell you why PPC matters outside the standard stuff of just pay-per-click, getting your brand to #1 on Google. And finally, how to drive better performance. And I'm going to do that by telling you a story. And like most stories, we're going to start with a cliffhanger. And this is going to use a little bit of audience participation, if that's okay. I appreciate it. It's like the 11th talk you've probably been to today. So let's get in the spirit of it. So hands up if you've ever been running PPC before and everything's going really well. And then overnight, your conversions just dropped off. Yeah, probably take a look around the room, right? Because if they've not got their hands up, they've either never done PPC or they know an amazing secret that we've got no idea about. Now, this happened to a company I was recently working with. And these guys were a small family-run company based in Sheffield. They worked on working with people in the logistics training services, things like HGV and forklifts. And what I loved about them is that they were such a nice company to work with, and every single lead that came through PPC really mattered to them. And they were really, really conscious about their budget. And what never ceased to amaze me is that every single inquiry that did come through, they made part of their family. And when they finished the training, they helped them with their jobs and in their day-to-day. And to me, that was huge. And you can imagine why it was so gut-wrenching when I received the following message from them that read, "I'm so sad. All inquiries have stopped." Now, at the time of receiving this, I was in Spain with my feet up on a sunbed, probably drinking a Straya. And I was like, shit, what's happened? And I messaged the web guy at the current agency who had taken over the PPC whilst I was off. And he didn't have an answer either. So I came back from holiday, obviously rushed on the first plane back. And I had a look at it. I had a look at what was going on. I had a look in this story of what happened in the break of that equilibrium. And effectively what had happened was that they went from having 20% impression share on the network to around 80% lost because of their budget. And the reason this, well, a huge, massive HGV company came onto the network, started taking all of the clicks, all the inquiries, and left this small family-run company with absolutely nothing. So it always takes me back to this question, which is, what does PPC mean? And I always had 2 words to that as well, which is, what does PPC mean to you? Because this is where we need to look at things when problems like this happen with our PPC. And half the time we get stuck in all this jargon, right? And I'm sure we've sat in front of Google or an agency or a freelancer or whatever else, and they've said that PPC is pay-per-click, getting your brand to #1, keywords, campaign goals, blah, blah, blah. And half the time we need to take it back to the basics. And for a company like LTS, PPC, it was the lifeblood of their company. For others, it's rolling the dice. It's not really understanding what's going to happen next. It's just spending a hell of a lot of money and not really having the answers as to why. For marketing managers, it could be a huge promotion in the company. And my favorite one, and the one that's really interesting, is that for a lot of business owners, it's the difference between them being able to take their families on holiday and have the freedom to pay themselves and their employees. And so with this mantra, we get to the disequilibrium in my story. And at this point, it's usually when, I don't know, Batman starts to work out how to fight the Joker. We get Green Lantern, Superman, all those nerdy characters. And they start building a plan. And that's what we did. And it leads me to my top tips in lead generation. And tip 1 is assigning values. Now, at its face value, assigning values to the conversion is something we're probably already doing, which is, I don't know, we have a demo request and we're saying to Google, that's worth £100 to us because it's valuable. We've got a brochure pop-up, we'll say that's worth 25, and then a pricing request, and that's 75. And all this hierarchy to our bidding systems is great, but we do need to take it one step further. So the first thing we did is we looked at our values and our close rates across the entire country. So an example, they were a Sheffield-based company. So our close rates in South Yorkshire were around 75%. In Lancashire, as an example, they were about 30%. And all the way down in Cornwall, well, obviously 5%, because nobody's traveling from Cornwall to Sheffield, and well, it'd be daft unless they're incredible. And we began to make this table look a little bit like this, where we had South Yorkshire at 75% close rate. So we understood that our daily budget for that needed to be around £100. We then had North Yorkshire, we could say that's a close rate of 50%, so then our budget became £75, and so on and so forth. But I thought, let's not stop there, we can probably take this further. So we started looking at lifetime values of the customers that were coming through as well. And with that, especially within the HGV market, every 5 years, customers would have to come back for something called driver CPC, it's part of it. So we started looking at how many of the customers that took the HGV training also came back for that. And we also looked at how many of the people came back and referred people, because as we know, referrals generate higher sales for the company. So we started to take that into an even bigger chart. So an example here, we knew our close rate in South Yorkshire was around 75%. We knew that we got 40% referrals in South Yorkshire from the people that we closed, and then 90% of them came back. And we knew at this point we could spend a lot of money there and see a lot of money down the line. Again, we took this further, even in Leicestershire, we have a 25% close rate just at the bottom there, but we also have 75% of people being referred by those close rates and 50% of them coming back. So we knew we could have a higher budget there as opposed to other places. But we thought we could keep growing this. We were on the path of data at this point, and we knew we could keep taking this further. And that's when we got a software called What Converts involved. And I'm not affiliated by What Converts at all, by the way, but I'd highly recommend looking at it. And this is why. It's a software that allows us to get all the inquiries that are coming into our business in every single way, whether it's phone calls, web forms, chats, if your e-commerce has got some transaction stuff on there. And all this data has the user journey, so we could really understand things in a better, holistic way that we couldn't just get by asking a logistics training company how many phone calls they were getting. At this point, we could really see the phone calls that were coming through. And what was even more impressive is that from all that data, we could work out how many of those were repeat, how many of them were unique, how many of them were quotable, and how many of them weren't quotable. So all this data, looking at our close rates across the entire UK, became even more tangible because we could really start to get onto the finer details of it. And what was even more impressive is that What Converts allows us to use it as a bit of a sales tool as well. So we could assign total quote values to some of these conversions and even total sales values. And all of this, well, we can import it directly back into our Google Ads console. So in this example here, we've got our What Converts phone call set up. As you can see, we've got a value there around £10,000. And that information was being directly sent back into our Google Ads, so we could see the location, the keywords, the search terms, even the ad creative of what was generating that sale. And yes, it does support enhanced conversions. So all of that valuable data insight on the customers could be fed directly back into the bid strategy systems that we were using to really enhance the Google's learning. So that was step one. Step two was looking at our quality score in the account. So for anybody who doesn't know what quality score is in the Google Ads account, it's effectively a way that Google measure your account. It's rated on a scale of 1 to 10. In this example here, if you have a quality score of 1, you're probably looking at a cost per click of around £1. As you start to get this down to 7, 8, 9, and 10, you're looking at around the 30 pence mark. So in essence, you're tripling the traffic to your website for the same cost. And what it's made up of 3 different things, which is your landing page experience, your ad relevance, and your expected click-through rate. And the better you get all of these 3 things up to the above average column, the higher your quality score. And you can measure this in your account as well, despite Google taking this out a few years ago. So a bit of a guide on this. What you want to do is you want to go into your Google Ads account, you want to get your quality score history column and your impressions column. You then want to download that as an Excel file, open it up, get rid of absolutely everything apart from that quality score history and the impressions. And at this point, we're going to do a bit of complicated maths, but I've simplified this down and I've made a bit of a spreadsheet here for you. So if you scan that QR code, it will take you to this spreadsheet, and effectively all you need to do is just copy in your quality score column and your impressions column there. Now I'll just take a gap while everyone's doing that and tell you a little bit of the story. When I was doing a presentation the other week with a QR code, and I was going to tell a joke in this gap, and then someone from the audience shouted out, who was working at the company, "Oh, Ethan's been learning salsa dancing recently." So in that spirit, I'm going to skip doing the salsa dancing and just go to the next slide. So for any skeptics out there just thinking, does quality score really make a difference to our Google Ads account? Yes, it does. This is an account I've been working on over the last 7 months. When I took the account over, we were looking at a quality score of 3 out of 10, and our cost per click for £1.77. Since then, we've got the quality score up to 8 out of 10, and as you can see here, our cost per clicks have dramatically dropped to 96 pence. And this has even had a huge impact on the conversions in the account as well. Again, when we took it over, the highest peak of the cost per conversion was £61. Ever since we've been optimizing on this every single day, we've managed to get this down to £13. So I'd highly recommend checking out your quality score, seeing what's going on, and if it's really low, start making those changes to get it better, because you'll just better the account in every single way. And tip 3, and my final tip, is seasonality adjustments. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of seasonality adjustments in your Google Ads account, and at face value, they go like this, which is, if you own a barbecue company in the summer, you're probably going to add a seasonality adjustment to say, yes, we're going to see more sales because people are in their garden. But that's not what I'm referring to how we're going to use seasonality adjustments within your account. So for anybody that doesn't know, seasonality adjustments are found in the Tools and Settings tab of your Google Ads account under Bid Strategies and then Advanced, and you'll find them straight away there. And I'll give you a use case of how I would use seasonality adjustments just so we can get on the same page. So let's say you set a campaign up and you set a target acquisition of around £25. You start running your campaign, but then you find that your CPA, well, it's not really £25, it's around the £30 mark, despite the fact that you asked for 25. Well, it's not great. And half the time here, what we'll usually do is apply some kind of logic that says, okay, let's put our cost per click at £30 in the hope that Google's system starts getting there and then edging it back down towards 25. And I'm sure everyone that's done that has realized it doesn't work. So what we need to do is we need to get down to Google's level. We need to look at it in its cold, hard eyes and say, look, we're not getting the target acquisition we wanted. We need to do something about it. Now I'm looking around the room and I'm thinking, yeah, I probably need to explain this a little bit better. So I have a story, which is the story of the tortoise and the hare. Now I'm sure you will know this is the tortoise won the race because the hare got complacent. But that's not my version of the story. In my version of the story, somebody realized the turtle wasn't going to win, strapped a rocket to its back, and it went flying across the finish line. And that is effectively what seasonality adjustments do to your account. We are applying a seasonality adjustment that's going to tell the back-end algorithm that we're not seeing the results that we want. The bidding system is then going to react quicker to this and start getting the results that we want to see. In this case, that £25 cost per acquisition. And as you can see here, what I effectively did is I applied a negative seasonality adjustment to the account of around 30%, telling Google we're not seeing that. We need to get 30% less. We need to down that cost per acquisition. And because of that, our cost per acquisition on the account, as you can see here, started to go below that £25 or even hitting that £25 on certain days. Another use case example of seasonality adjustments as well is when you've got ad campaigns that are limited by budget. I'm sure we've all seen this where we've got our daily budget of £5, you click on this little thing and it says spend £500. It's not going to happen. So what we'll do in this case is we go into the account, we apply a seasonality adjustment, a negative one of around 20%, and you'll start to find that these campaigns then relax. And in this case, it was an e-commerce one, and our conversion value, our ROAS, started to increase because we were telling the system it could relax. We're not actually limited by budget. And any seasonality adjustment, I would absolutely recommend testing your account. I would go in there, I would test a negative, a positive, 10%, 30%, 40%, whatever, because it will have a positive impact on your conversions. You just have to find that nice middle ground for it. And thus, a new equilibrium was created. And going back to that small family-run company in Sheffield, We applied all three of these things to the account slowly over time, and we managed to get things back on track for the company, and they hit the ground running, and now they're doing incredibly well on a massive hiring spree, and all things are good. So, what should you do now? What should you take away from this presentation? Well, first of all, understand your values within the business. Not just what your cost per lead is, but understanding your LTVs, understanding your close rates, and applying that to your PPC. It's testing seasonality adjustments. Test them in absolutely any way that you guys can think. If you're stopping limited budgets, if you're lowering your CPAs, if you're e-commerce, just trying to increase your ROAS, just find a nice balance with them. And finally, calculating your quality score. Go in there, do something about it. And you know, if it's bad, if you're working with an agency or freelancer, probably question what they're doing. Why isn't it high? If it's all good, you know, sit back, put your feet up, happy days. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for listening to me. If you've got any questions, I'll be over here. Feel free to ask me.